Hello YouTube! Welcome! Today I'll go over one of the best filters you can use and how you can build one for yourself. The Matten Filter, also known as the Hamburger Matten Filter, or HMF, is basically a large air-driven sponge filter. The huge surface area provides enough biological filtration for highly stocked tanks, even when the tank lacks substrate or is otherwise bare. Being air-driven, you can run many of them from a single air pump. And for these reasons, I run Matten filters in most of my breeding and rearing tanks. There are some pros and cons. Pros, that these are really cheap, low cost to build and to run. They have a massive surface area for their biofilter. You can hide your heaters, uplift valves, other things behind the filter. And they're pretty low maintenance because they're so huge they don't clog up very fast. Cons, they take up a whole wall of the tank. A lot of space. Being so large, they're pretty cumbersome to remove and take out of the tank to clean. And an airlift isn't completely silent. It has some gurgling noise that you can't avoid. You should consider using one if you're running a rack of tanks, particularly when the tanks are viewed from the end, so you don't look behind the filter. Tanks where at least one end is not used for display, such as a corner tank, and bare bottom tanks with no substrate that have a lot of fish, a high bioload. When they're not great, it's for hospital tanks and quarantine tanks. So everything has to be sterilized after each use, and that filter is hard to take out and clean. Display tanks that have no hidden ends. If you're looking all the way around the display tank, you don't want to be looking at the back of the Matten filter. And marine tanks. It actually works great in marine tanks, but those bubbles pop and cause a lot of salt creep. You also have the option to use it either with a jet lift or an air stone. The traditional way to run the filter is by drilling a hole in the top 90-degree bend adapter and feed an air line down through. Then you attach an air stone at the bottom of the PVC uplift tube. This works fine but has some limitations. The air stone takes up room in the pipe. That restricts the water flow. Using a larger pipe can overcome this, but then you gotta use more air. One fix is called a jet lift. It's basically an adapter that you put on the bottom of your uplift pipe. Has a ring of small holes around the perimeter that produce a curtain of bubbles around the wall of the pipe and no obstruction to the flow. The airline attaches the jet lift on the outside, and the design allows for very high flow, allowing you to run more tanks with the air supply than you would otherwise. Alright, we're going to need some supplies. You're going to want a 1.5 to 2 inch thick of open cell urethane foam. Usually 25 to 40 pores per inch is a good range. Large enough to more than cover one end of your tank. You're going to want some 1/2 inch PVC pipe, at least the height of the tank plus about 3 inches for the outflow. You're going to want a 1/2 inch PVC 90-degree elbow. You're going to want your jet lift or air stone, and then you're going to need your air supplies, your airline, air valve, and air pump. For tools, you're just going to need a sharp knife to cut the filter foam and a PVC cutter or hacksaw to cut the PVC. Optionally, you might need a hot glue gun, a drill, and a copper pipe to punch holes. Here's how we build it. For the sponge, it's very easy. You need a thick sheet of open cell foam. 1.5 to 2 inches thick is best. Must be thick enough to not be floppy. It needs to stand up in the tank. Cut the foam so it tightly fits one end of the tank. It's best to make it about 1/2 inch wider than the tank so that it fits tightly even if it's angled a little bit. You don't want the fish to get lost behind it. It should be tall enough to reach the trim or the lid of the tank. You can use hot glue to assemble smaller sections of foam together if necessary. Decide where you want the uplift tube to exit from the sponge, and then cut a notch or a hole for the uplift tube to come through. If you're making many Matten filters, you can use a small section of copper pipe to punch these holes. File one end of the pipe to a circular knife edge, and you've made a handy little hole punch. For the uplift tube, it's made out of a length of PVC a bit shorter than the tank is tall, a 90-degree PVC elbow, and a small section of PVC pipe slightly longer than your sponge is wide. If you're using an air stone, drill a hole in the PVC elbow and feed in your airline. If using an airlift, remember to account for the length of the airlift when cutting the pipe. And if using an air stone, make sure to leave about a 1 inch gap between the pipe and the bottom of the tank for the water flow. Cut your pipe and assemble. It should form an upside down L that fits into the hole or notch in your sponge. Also note, if you use my jet lift adapter, and it fits a tad loose on the pipe, you can use a small bit of electrical tape on the pipe to snug it up. Then you attach your airline and your air stone if you're using one, and push the whole assembly into the end of the tank. The filter's now installed. Connect your air valve, air pump, and it should begin moving water. You're going to want to adjust the airflow until you're happy with the water flow. If you feed it too much air, it's just going to gurgle without moving much water. Find the sweet spot for the max flow and then adjust it down as needed. Some fish might not like that much flow. And that's all there is to it. Once you've built one you like, make sure to take down measurements and you can build a bunch more. Check the links in the description to print your own jet lift or to buy one from me. And please post any suggestions or questions in the comments. Click like if you like this and subscribe to see more. And until next time, thanks for watching.